Today we have something very exciting, and that is the tack and the evolution taking it to a roll tack. Something that a lot of people struggle with on a surfboard, and it's one of those key transitions. So let's get into it. Welcome back everyone, Evan Netch. And if you're enjoying these videos, feel free to like and subscribe below for more to come. We're gonna be breaking down all types of different riding styles, tricks, tips, and techniques pertaining to a surfboard. But today, we're gonna be looking at the tack and also the roll tack. So let's start picking this transition apart a little bit, as it is something that I use more than a jibe, almost every single tack I do on a surfboard. But it's one of those maneuvers that I think is a lot more challenging than it looks. And I've seen a lot of people really struggle, and there is some definitely timing technique that makes this trick really tricky, I think, to really click and make sense. So first off, a tack. A tack is an upwind transition. You have a tack or a jibe. I think a jibe is your standard go-to, easier first transitions to do on a surfboard. But what's really nice about a tack is, especially if you're trying to get back upwind, you're pinching upwind, and you're powered. You don't care about keeping your speed through a turn. You're of course not on a wave, and you just want to really be able to quickly and effectively turn around without losing any ground. That is your tack. And so what we're doing with the tack is we're basically carving our board upwind into the wind. We're getting to that halfway point where we're facing into the wind, and then we're switching our feet, and then we're redirecting the kite, and we're going back the other direction. Now there's a couple different ways to do it. You can simply do what I just did then, which is turn into the wind, switch your board around, switch your feet, go the other direction, or you can kind of carve all the way around, continue carving, where the bar actually goes over your head, and you're essentially doing a back roll, come around this way, and then switch your feet and go out the other direction. And this is considered a roll tack. It's a little more technically difficult. It's what a lot of people do on a foil, because it kind of keeps a little more speed. It keeps a little more contact with the board to control a board or a foil. But I want to talk today mostly about your standard tack, and we'll just kind of touch on a roll tack at the end. So for our regular tack, what we need to focus on, I believe, is really the timing between your carving into the wind with your board and the timing of your kite. And this is the challenge in the tack, is if you can do each piece completely perfectly, but if you don't get the timing of those two, of your board timing and your kite timing dialed in just perfect, then it's really tricky, because your momentum's gonna kind of stop or go, your momentum's gonna stop or go with or without the board, and you're gonna kind of end up continuing on and leaving your board behind, or you're gonna try to turn and kind of stall. So as we're going into our tack, what I like to do is ride along, sheeted out on the bar. And being sheeted out on the bar, specifically with the kite high, what this allows you to do is create more power as you need it midway through the tack by slowly sheeting in, to give yourself a little bit of lift, to give you a little more time on the water to switch your feet. And when we go into the tack, we want to keep enough speed, enough momentum where we can point our board up into the wind. But we don't want to go into it full speed, because that's that much more speed we need to kill, because we're essentially coming to a stop halfway through. So go into it with, I would say, just a moderate amount of speed. The more speed you carry into it, the farther you will, and you'll have to carve up into the wind to stop. So as you get better, more comfortable with your tacks, I think you can really go into them extra slow and make it work, or extra fast and manage that speed easily. But starting out, we want to go in just a nice average speed. And we also don't want to be, our goal is to point up into the wind, but we don't want to go into it edging super hard, because it's like you don't have that spring to load up ahead of time to carve into the wind. You're already cutting up so hard, it's hard to gain additional momentum to go extra high into the wind. So I just try to ride along just a very normal tack angle. And I also try to be, I'll focus a lot on pointing the board where I want to go, not necessarily carving or edging it as hard when I'm just riding. So really use your fins to point your board. And in doing this is kind of like you're steering with your back foot, but a lot of weight's on your front foot going into the tack. So as I carve, or I'm gonna even say turn into the wind, because it's not as much of a carve, as I turn into the wind, I'm using my back foot to steer the nose of the board into the wind as the kite's nice and high, kind of in front of me, and I'm sheeted out on the bar. And sheeting out on the bar kind of allows me to extend my front shoulder into the wind, and then as I'm carving up into the wind, I'm sheeted out on the bar, the kite slowly drifting up to 12 o'clock at the same time. And the goal is basically right when you get to the stopping position, where the nose of the board is straight into the wind, that's when you want the kite straight over your head. Everything's lined up and kind of stopped at once. And at this point, depending on how powered you are, you have a little bit of time. So right here is when I will start redirecting the kite. Keep in mind, there's always a little bit of delay in the kite. So I'll start redirecting the kite as I'm sheeting in on the bar. I'm sheeting in on the bar, one, to give me some lift to switch my feet around and so the board doesn't sink, because at this point you can almost kind of stand static on the board. So I'm sheeting in, one, to give myself just enough lift where I can switch my feet on the board and not sink, and two, as you sheet in on the bar, that makes your steering input more effective on the kite. So I'm gonna carve up into the wind. Right as I come to that stall, I'm gonna sheet in, redirect the kite. I'm gonna do a quick switch of my feet, which basically my front shoulder is pointed into the wind, and now I'm quickly gonna point this shoulder kind of downwind towards the tail of the board. My back foot is gonna come forward, front foot's gonna come back, just like you do when you're switching stance, riding from heel side to toe side. And now at this point, I have my right hand on the bar still. If you notice, the whole time going into this, you basically are just using your top hand, because the kite starts high, but in this case on the left side. So we're bringing the kite up with our right hand. As we switch our feet, now we're still just using our right hand to redirect the kite. Now at this point, our board's faced basically straight into the wind, and the kite's starting to dive, and as the kite's overhead. And as that happens, I'd say there's almost two ways to turn the board. One is you can almost kind of like sink the tail and pivot the board around to get that nose pointed back across the wind or back downwind. Or if a lot of your weight really goes forward, I find that often the board will just slide around as well. So you can kind of, I find, do either or. You can have your weight really far back or really far forward, just whatever it takes to bring that nose of the board around as that kite's redirecting, and then you're off the other direction. So that is your basic tack. Main points in that, again, would be just simply ride into it at a fairly straight line, turn up into the wind. As you turn up into the wind, slowly bring the kite up over your head. As you're doing that, you're sheeting out on the bar. Sheeting out on the bar allows you to point higher into the wind. It kills your speed, it kills your power. And then right when your kite's overhead, you're sheeted out. Now you can sheet in on the bar to give yourself a little bit of lift to switch your feet, and you're sheeting in also to have that steering in the kite. As you redirect your kite, you go the other way. Now, if you are to carve up into the wind, I'd say this is a common mistake. You carve up into the wind really quickly, but your kite doesn't come up over your head. Now you're into the wind, but your kite's still pulling you forward. So your board turns, you kind of fall off your board, you go forward, you leave your board behind. The other common mistake is kind of the opposite of that, where you turn your kite pretty aggressively as you're carving up into the wind. You carve up into the wind, and then you kind of get pulled off your board, your new direction, leaving your board behind. So depending on what you find you're doing, I would say the biggest piece of advice I give to anybody is just look at your kite timing, focus on that, and make an adjustment. Maybe that's bringing your kite up a little bit later or bringing it up a little bit sooner, depending on what you're doing wrong. So that is your basic tack. Now, real quick, diving into the roll tack, and I'm going to keep this pretty short and simple, as it is a little more advanced. And I would say you really want to get your standard tack down before you dive into your roll tack. But your roll tack is the same principle. It's the same kite movement, it's the same board movement, just different in your body. So we're going to still focus on carving up into the wind as we bring that kite up over our head. Now, once we're facing straight into the wind, with a regular tack, we're basically switching our body back. With a roll tack, our body is continuing the same movement into and across the wind, basically it's the equivalent of doing a back roll. If you were to continue your direction, you're rotating the same way that you would do a back roll. And what's nice about the roll tack is it just feels nice and smooth. It's a continuation of that momentum as opposed to stopping and switching. And I think in some ways it gives you a little bit more control. And I think that's why a lot of people like doing it with a foil board, where you want to maintain that control with the foil. But so as we carve up into the wind, and we're right here, and we start redirecting the kite, the keys with the roll tack is to get the bar across your body pretty quickly before you really redirect it. If the bar is still here and you start pulling and sheeting in, you're gonna kind of get pulled backwards. So really commit, carve up across into the wind, get the bar over your head nice and quickly as you switch your feet. Normally the lines wouldn't be wrapped around you, they're going up. So as you carve up, push the bar over your head, switch your feet right here, and then sheet in and redirect the kite, and then you can ride off the other direction. It's nice because it just feels very clean, fast, and a good fluid motion. But the trick is you don't have quite as much time, I would say. You know, with your regular tack, you can carve up into the wind, kind of stop, hang out, bobble a little bit, sheet in slowly. The longer you stand here and bobble, the more you can sheet in for more and more power and redirect kind of at your leisure. With the roll tack, you really need to get your bar over your body and your feet switched quickly. That way you can start to sheet in. You really can't start that process of sheeting in until you get that bar on the other side of your body. Then you sheet in, redirect your kite, put yourself off the other direction. So that is your tack, that is your roll tack. It's really, once you dial it in, I find it's actually a quicker, it's a quicker change of direction, I think, for myself. So I use it a lot in the waves where I just need to turn around really fast in front of a wave that might be breaking, or I find a nice wave that I want to turn onto to ride and I don't want to go downwind, or I'm just kind of tacking back and forth in place. So a tack, one of those basic transitions on a surfboard that truthfully I think is more challenging than it looks, but in that it makes it that much more rewarding and that much more fun. So I hope this video helped. For more videos like this, we're going to continue dropping different strapless riding tips, techniques, and everything regarding riding a surfboard, kiteboarding. So tune in for more, and thanks so much for watching today.